Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Capital Flows live stream. We have a interesting stream today where we're going to cover market views. We're going to go over all the trades that we've been talking about. We're going to go over some of the trading archetypes that James and I have been talking about. And then also today we also have guests on the stream that I've been meaning to chat with, and we're going to go over all the kind of different views that he's been sharing on Twitter, all the kind of different community he runs. And so if you guys don't already, I believe it's Flow-sided, right? Is that how you pronounce it?
Yep, that's it.
Awesome. So appreciate you joining today, man. How are things going on your end? I'm glad we were able to finally have you on and chat.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. I kind of wanted to do it a couple weeks ago, but I just didn't have time. But yeah, I mean, everything's good. Oh, sorry, I was on the Discord voice. Just looking through TE was obviously the one that we've been flagging a lot. Multiple strikes, 9.5 calls, 11 calls. But after that short report from that account or something like that, now it's up like 35%. But yeah, a lot of mixed flow today. Obviously Per was a great call out from you, Capital, and we saw those early on as well. I like the $6 range, so that was also good. FCell, we saw a lot of flow in that, but that kind of took a big hit. But yeah, today's just a lot of kind of mixed flow, and obviously with that Nvidia earnings as well. So
right on. Give for people who don't know, give the kind of 30-second elevator pitch about kind of who you are, what you're doing, and how you've kind of gotten into the space overall, and what you really focus on in terms of trading.
Yeah. So I'm the co-owner of Owl's Options Traders Discord group with my partner John. We started this in 2020, but I've been trading since like 2017, 2018. And then in 2021 or mid 2020, I started using unusual options activity. So that's my trading style. I love using the flow. That's how I find my trades. And that's just what's it called? Yeah, that's just the way I trade. Alice I've been doing this for like 6 years, gone through multiple types of markets, and yeah, that's basically it. Pretty simple.
I love it. When you think about part of your trading process, how do you work down through kind of the filter of coming up with ideas and working through that in terms of looking at flow or kind of overlaying some macro stuff or broader picture with the markets and things like that? How do you kind of think through that process a little bit?
Yeah. So obviously the first thing I look at is the flow, and then I see the type of orders that come in. Obviously as a beginner flow trader, a lot of people would just look at the contracts and see if it's just because there's a million in premium, they'll just buy it right away. They won't even look at the chart. They'll just think, okay, well, someone's putting $1 million in the contract, thinks that, okay, this is gonna for sure hit. So no, it doesn't really work like that. So when I look at the flow, I have multiple filters, coming from either put selling, out the money contracts are, let's say, are 15-20% out the money with 60 days with expiration. Those ones are actually pretty effective, especially when the market is hot, because whales don't have that much time with expiration and they're expecting a big move. So then once I filter out that kind of flow, I'll have ETF flow as well, but that feels very sporadic. They could, and again, any flow trade could be a hedge. A lot of people will say like, okay, this, and SPY put, it's a very big order, and people will think, okay, someone knows something. It's like, no, you don't know the other side of the trade. Like, this could just be a simple hedge, and you can basically think that every flow is a hedge, right? Even if it's a call, right? But you just got to, take it head on, and if that flow matches, your style of trading, if you're an ICT trader, if you're just a, technical trader with, chart patterns, and see if that aligns as well. So, I'll look at the flow, on specific filters, um, making sure the market, as a whole, like, if there's bullish flow on a certain stock, but if the market's looking, pretty weak, if it's below certain moving averages, then, maybe it's probably not the best to take that flow. But multiple things have to align. Your risk tolerance, your setup, and if the flow looks clean, then you just got to take it, right? The market will do what it wants to do, but if everything aligns in your process, that's just how trading is.
I like it. I
Well,
like it. Go for it, James.
yeah, let me jump in here. It's really interesting that, by the way, can you hear me okay? Is that all right
Yeah,
now?
you're coming in. You're coming in. This
Okay.
is James, by the way, Flow or Flow side, and
Yeah,
I
nice to
think
meet
Nice
you,
to meet
man.
you, man.
So I found it really interesting that I run a small Discord group as well, and it's obviously part of the new era, right? Of
Yep.
product and community and trying to kind of create that. I always talk about creating the trading network and stuff. So could you talk a little bit about how that experience has been and how people approach your Discord and how you deal with people? Because we all come with different expectations and incentives and time horizons and life situations. It's like, how do you incorporate all of that into running like your Discord group to kind of deal with people from all sorts of different angles
Yeah.
and kind of try to help everybody succeed?
Yeah. I mean, the first thing I kind of, want people to understand when they join is all about risk management and the get rich quick mentality. I think a lot of people see on social media these 1000% gainers, 500%, so on and so forth, and they'll join these discords and think that they're going to have these type of trades right away, right? So when these guys come in, I'm like, listen, yes, you're gonna have some of these trades, but the main goal is to not lose money, right? The goal of options trading is like to not lose, right, or to not lose as much money than to make. But so it's all about risk management for me. I tell them, hey, like, start small, preserve your capital. Don't hope, I always like base hits, right? You'll always be very successful taking those 15, 20%, 30% wins rather than hoping to get that 100%, 200% win. They just end up getting burned out. So I really start with that, right? I always tell them, hey, this is not a get rich quick thing, overnight thing, right? You may see it on social media and seeing people make, you know 2000% on their account overnight, but that's just not normal. So I always make sure to say, hey, become a trader, not a gambler, right? We don't want you to just enter 500 trades and hope and be a hero for your account, right? Go in, be smart, preserve your capital, and act like a professional. Because I think a lot of people in this space these days, it's becoming a very, like, betting is become so huge, right? It used to just be like sports, but now it's like you can bet on anything. And so everyone is just on this like high of, you know, betting that the market will go this, that, the weather, whatever, like Polymarket, all this stuff, and they'll come in and have this, this crazy energy. But I always try to keep it, level-headed, right? Come in, act like a professional, and you'll be successful.
Yeah, basically trying to probably have to tamper expectations for a lot of people and hit them with a little bit of the realistic stick, right?
Yep. Yep.
I love that because the reason you'll be able to eventually hit the 2000% trade is because you hit 500 singles, right?
Yep.
And then you'll be able to decipher like, oh wait, this one's different. This one's like sneaky. This one's got the volatility is so compressed here. Like the expansion of this, people aren't. It's just not priced right. Like I don't know options, so
Yep.
I'm just fucking. I'm going off
Yeah.
off my here. But like you having been in the markets for so long are going to be able to recognize that, and then the newbie is going to think every opportunity is that, right? So it's almost
Exactly.
like your job as the guy in there to kind of start tampering those expectations and to educate and inform them as to why, like, hey, longevity here, the infinite game is more important than the finite one time, one trade, everything matters right now type of situation.
Yep. Exactly. And having experience in the market, you really know when to, put your foot on the gas and when to, to step back, right? A lot of people, will still overtrade. We always say no trade cash is a position. You don't always have to be in a trade every single day. That's not the goal, right? If the setup is not there, if the market's telling you, hey, maybe we step back for a sec, and if it's chopping or whatever, there's nothing wrong with just being sidelined. But that's what I feel like a lot of people need to learn these days is that not every day you have to be in a new position.
Yeah, I think it's one of the most contrarian things to think right now that actually the power of cash is like, to me it's amplified, right?
Hmm.
You could put cash in these weird instruments now and be getting a decent APR while you wait for great opportunities. And the great opportunities are all over the place these days. Where if like when did you start trading, Flo?
I
Sorry.
s- I started trading in end of 2017 and 2018, beginning of 2018.
Okay, perfect. I mean, if you were around in 2017, 2018, it was these slower, kind of
Yep.
up and to the right, boring mark. I
Slow
remember
grind.
specifically in
Yeah.
2017 just being like, ugh, this is like so boring and like
Yep.
whatever. And in that moment, sure, cash is kind of weird and worthless because it's like there was no interest on it. There was no exciting new technology boom. Like it's almost like you were just like letting it die a
Yep.
rotten death. But now, like the moves are so crazy that the like you could get 10, 15, 20% moves in a week. Like your cash is all of a sudden got this like this whatever you call this stuff to start a fire, this tinder behind it that like if you light the fuse in the right spots, it's worth way more than it's ever really been.
Yep. Exactly. Exactly. And again, I feel like the crazy options volume and trading has started during COVID, right? That was 2017 to 2018. It was just like a slow grind, right? And you're kind of just like, okay, well, this is really not much going on. And then when COVID happened, everyone's at home and everyone's in front of their computer, and Robinhood makes it so easy to open an account and start trading, and that's what started everything. I feel like.
Oh, I totally agree. Totally agree. The reason I really like this stuff, and I think you've probably seen it firsthand a lot. We were going to cover this idea of like trading archetypes yesterday. We didn't get to it because our stream went forever. I mean, these streams have been really fun, but they've we've been taking them deep, like 2 hours or so. But if it's cool with you, I'd like to just run through this deck that I had, and I think
Yeah.
I'd really at the end be interested in tying it back to see like what archetype do you lean towards, and then what archetype do you find that your members and the people you interact with
Hmm.
um, lead towards more.
Sure.
So if that's cool with you, I'm just going to
Yeah.
run through this quick flows. Is that all right if I just bring that up?
Yeah, shoot.
All right. So I'm on a laptop, so I'm gonna kind of go over to this other screen, and keep going here. So you guys can see this, right? Trading
Yep.
archetypes deck. Now, look, I'm not great at making decks. Don't blame me that the S is off to the side. Okay, just let me breathe a little bit. Okay, Jesus Christ. So I know a lot of you guys follow flows. You're both flows, so whatever. You guys follow these two guys, and you might not know kind of as much of what I do, but I try to look at things from like the mindset psychology side of things. And the reason why Flows and I have been doing this is like he's going to bring this, global macro foundational pricing of money. And then I'm going to bring the mindset psychology, scalping, trade composition, execution, and we're going to meet in the middle and hopefully provide some value for everybody. But one of the foundations that I've always gone back to is like, you can't just come in trying to be Global Flows. You can't come in trying to be Flowsidon or Jabes. Like you need to sit back like, hey, I want to be a trader. I want to do this for a long time. You need to sit back and reflect, first of all, on like who you are as a person, what you're trying to get out of this thing. What are your expectations? Do you have a job? Do you not have a job? Do you have kids? Do you not have kids? Do I have a bankroll? Do I not have a bankroll? Blah, 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 blah. All of these big things right here, right? So, I want to highlight like the difference here, right? You have the picture of the 24-year-old crypto bro who lives on his computer and his phone, doesn't care about volatility. The world's against him. No real obligations. Lives in the Discord. Loves fast, quick decisions. And again, can just weather, losing 40% of his bankroll like it's no big deal, and go out and buy his coffee or whatever he's going to do that day, or walk around Brickell, Miami, because I think that's where they all live, right? And then you have the other one who is like me, right? The old fuck from the suburbs who's got a family. I actually am not limited on time. This is my job, so I do feel in the trenches. But like, you want maybe more of a steady income. You want to have a little bit more stability so that you can be present in your kids' lives. Well, not letting the trying to silo things a little bit, compartmentalize things a little bit, and to preserve and compound capital. So these, I think it's pretty obvious to most people that these two people should not be trading the same, right? Like they shouldn't, they won't trade the same. They shouldn't trade the same. And I think that just kind of is obvious. So I kind of broke that down into like, and look, there's more archetypes, and I get it. This is just painting a broad picture here, right? But you have what I would refer to as a bull, right? This is going to be that leading thinker. Where's the puck going? Broad kind of visionary, really aggressive, wants to be the one that's kind of pushing the pace in the world, right? Then you have the owl, and I'll break these down a little bit more. The owl is going to be a little bit more of that critical thinker. I'm never going to make a move until I understand something down to the absolute bones. And then I want to be very conservative with what I'm doing. The fox, which is going to be a bit more of the guy who's scalping around, going with the sentiment, the flows, following this, like catalyst on the news, whatever. That it's the back and forth, the long short, the guy who's rotating constantly. Then you have the elephant, who is going to be maybe it's somebody with a bit more capital. They're defensive in nature. They want things to compound over time. They don't want to be chasing the next shiny object. It's all about survival and compounding. All right, so you can see how these are all going to be very different things. And guys, I have this deck sent to Global Flows, and he's going to put this with. You'll attach it to this after the call, I assume, and everybody will get it.
Yeah, everyone can grab this, and then I'll have Flowsidon's links and everything else on the Capital Flows Research website. So if you guys want to go through everything on there, everything will be laid out at capitalflowsresearch.com. All the educational primers, all the stuff here, and you can go through and in the article I sent out today, you can download this deck, and then if you want to, I'll have all of Flowsidon stuff linked, but here's his section, his Twitter page as well, and you can go through, search him at his @ and then go through his stuff as well. But that's where everything will, for Flowsidon, all of his stuff will be here, and then all of the research will be on the website there. But yeah, we'll have it all linked.
Thanks. So I won't go through all these full slides, but if you want to do this, I'd suggest pulling them off to the side later and reading them. And I also have some videos on my YouTube channel that are about this exactly. And I do have some like longer things I call spirit guides that are like 150 pages breaking down these things a lot more in a simple sense. But the general idea here for a bull, right? High conviction, bigger sizing, quicker decision making, strong asymmetric upside capture, can handle emotional swings, or can deal with them. That could be kind of the downside of it, and can eventually overtrade or get too pot committed, or feel like their identity is attached to results. Right? There's upsides and downsides to every archetype, and also you're going to have a little bit of every archetype. Right? You're not just like bucketed into one. But you can see, like, as you read through this deck later on, you're going to have things that are more aligned with you and things that are less aligned with you. So I would go through, kind of think about that. Like, think about your positions that you are in today. Did you get swayed into doing that, right? Because you read a flow side post about something, or a global flows post about per. Well, look, if you're a defensive, compounding, boring, don't ever have time to tap in, don't really care about the macro type of person, and you haven't even been in the per trade, maybe that trade's not for you, right? But you can learn a lot from it, right? Maybe it's more of a bull trade that was there at the start and had heavy conviction and had a good entry, whatever. You catch my drift. The owl is going to be a bit more of the long-term thinker, loves the research process, calm under pressure because they're not being convinced to do something just because other people are doing it. They're really good at accumulation in stealth mode before anybody really maybe knows what's going on, right? They can see that bigger picture. But what could be the downsides of that? Missing trades. Maybe there is a hot market that you don't capture anything of. You hesitate, you question yourself. Do you really know everything about everything? You got a lot of analysis paralysis as owls. So upside, downside. Fox, fast rotations, aware of the narrative, flexible, creative, strong instincts, reads the flow well, probably feels sentiment and catalysts and all that. But over trading, can become inconsistent, can get chopped up, could look back over a bull market and be like, wait a minute, I'm poorer. What happened? Right? That's, a lot of people that we probably see, and I'll let you tap on this later, but people are foxes when they come into this space. They want to chase everything. They want to be that, savvy trader, but it can hurt a lot of people. And last up, elephant, always aware of the risk, stable, patient, slow, and intentional with all of their decisions. Never going to blow up. All they want to do is protect their capital, right? But a lot of times these guys will underperform, kind of like the owl, right? They're going to be so defensive and a little bit scared in nature that they're just going to miss out on massive upside. And over time, maybe their compounding actually wins them more than a lot of different archetypes, but it could be 40 years down the road. So maybe they're not going to change their life in 3 years, but in 30 years, they could be in a really great spot. So again, I would go through and think about the alignment with all of those, right? So here's an interesting way, like you could kind of visualize these different archetypes in these different, like, an owl is going to have a lot of patience, probably, middle of the ground conviction on things until they really know what they're doing. Maybe not so adaptable, not so much risk tolerance, but really heavy on the analysis. Like, this kind of visualizes kind of where your mindset lives in this archetype framework. And again, how does your strategy fit your life? How much time do you have available? What's your emotional tolerance to risk and volatility and drawdowns and even winning? How do you handle winning? How much capital do you have? Do you have runway? Do you not? What's your experience level? Have you been in the markets like Flowside since 2017 and seen quite a lot of shit? Or are you just starting in 2025 and you like prediction markets and perps? All right. It's going to be a different person. What are your family responsibilities? What are your goals? All right. These are all questions you need to be at least taking some time with. And last but not least, I like to tie these things back to the bets that we're in, right? So if you're just showing up now and you don't really realize that the global flows bets that have been on, we have Per, we have Oracle, right? These have been the ones we've been talking about a lot. How might the bull, the fox, the owl, the elephant be thinking about this Per trade, right? Maybe the bull is trying to ride the momentum, is kind of able to handle the swings, right? Not chasing, kind of just trying to accumulate to their position and compound and find that asymmetry over time. Maybe the fox doesn't want to be holding this thing for 6 months. Maybe he's going to sell on every rip and buy on every dip. The owl might be waiting for confirmation to put on a position or to wait for big pullbacks to really, make sure that they're not taking big risk here. And the elephant might just be like, all right, hey, this isn't really my thing. It's pretty aggressive in nature. Maybe I'll start pushing me to take a small position in something like PER, to start to feel what it's like to be in a high volatility position, to push my boundaries a little bit, to grow as a trader, right? Oracle might lean more into the elephant's thesis, where it went down 60, 65% or whatever we've been accumulating since this area after the sell-off. Maybe this is one of those companies of Larry Ellison, and that's a strong portfolio addition to your compounding thing over a long time. So maybe it leans more towards the elephant, and maybe it leans less towards the fox who wants to be in and out and in and out, because Oracle is going to move a little bit slower than PER and Hyperliquid are right now. So I think that's a quick kind of broad synopsis on how I think about individual traders. And sorry if I rambled there a bit, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on that from both you and Flowside. And if you want to go first, I'd love to hear how you relate to one of those or what you see other people do.
Yeah, when when I first started options trading, I was definitely more of that aggressive, just crackhead mentality type trader. Just having those, like, trying to find those aggressive moves. Being in like 3-4 positions. And this is before the Discord. This is when I was doing it, but by myself, and having the confidence and just doing my own thing. But as time went on, I became way more preservative, and I'm right now I'm very preservative. So even though I look at thousands and thousands of flow orders every day that maybe 10, 15, 20 of them look really good, I'll still maybe play 2 to 3, let's say every other day. So I think, like, toward, like, for the week, there'll be weeks where I'll play maybe 2 trades, right? Even though I've seen so many flow trades that are coming in, I've become very more, I preserve a lot of my capital. And I don't have a kid, or a wife or anything. I'm so young. My risk tolerance should be high, because I can, obviously risk a little more at my age. But again, that's just the trader I am. No matter how many trades I see on flow, for me, I just like to, find that 1 or 2 and ride that. But yeah, back in the day, it was very, give me 100% on 10 trades in 3 days, size for 0 in a lot of them. But now it's like, okay, no, I want to, just give me those 2-3 trades a week, and I profit.
Flowside,
So,
how
like,
do you
what-
how do you
Go ahead.
I was just going to ask, how do you think about this entire market environment? With that, you're talking about, okay, batting my singles and kind of just picking my spots. How do you think about when the environment, matching that to the environment where you're kind of in a period of time where we're just kind of batting singles, and then how do you think about, okay, if volatility begins to expand, is that a moment where you just say, okay, if the VIX begins to blow out, we start to have a market crash? Is that kind of where you begin to size up, or you're saying, you know what, I'm just going to wait a little bit, get a little less aggressive, just wait to kind of have this stuff flow through and then get back in later? How do you think about preparing for that period of time, or how do you think about those, you could say, tails on either side when you're taking these bets? So is that kind of where you want to be the most, or is that those are just things that you're trying to sidestep? How do you think about that?
Yeah, I think it remains the same. And as far as like sizing up, I I usually never size up until my account has personally, like 2x, 3x or whatever, regardless of the market conditions. Like, when I became very aggressive was back in that, what was it, like beginning of September, October, where all those, high beta stocks made a lot of those runs. And that's where I became very aggressive, because obviously the flow on those were just it was just working so well. I remember waking up like every morning thinking that the market's just gonna make this crazy pullback, but it just would not. You'd see all, those like NVTS, ONDS, um, APLD, those type of tickers. You'd see them up 15% a day, and you'd have all these flow contracts that I would see 30% out the money for 500K in premium. The chart didn't look the greatest, but when you see all these types of, positions, you're like, man, I gotta become very aggressive. But yeah, regardless of the market conditions, if we do have the VIX expansion and we do have a sell off, it remains the same for me. I still, obviously if there's more opportunity in my face, then of course I will take advantage of it. But as far as my strategy, it will probably remain the same.
Yeah, I like it. I think James and I often talk about how are, we always thinking about and preparing for when you have those kind of periods of time of volatility, because I think now on the upside and downside, especially with the amount of structured products we have now, especially with the amount of option flow. I mean, I think there was a chart going around a week or so ago on how much notional option interest there is in the S&P 500, and it's an insane amount these days.
Yeah.
And I think that it's really interesting because I think there's a lot more compression involved, and then you have these really, really fast blowouts where everything gets priced in like a really quick moment. I'd be curious how you think about, when vol blows out to the upside or downside or something like that. Do you find yourself having to take gains faster and it's harder for it to just kind of grind along, but you just get everything priced really aggressively in a moment, and then you wait for a while and then it has another expansion, and we just have a lot more explosive moves, but then just periods of really longer calm between them? Or how do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, definitely take the gains much faster. Um, with these type of moves. Yeah, I'm not exactly sure how else I'd answer this question. But yeah, no, just taking positions off much faster. And yeah, and also after that type of situation, I will definitely just like take a step back and be like, okay, let me just let the market just kind of settle in, and then we'll go from there.
Right.
I have a question on that. Like, are you somebody who has traded so many different names, and had so many different expansions and contractions of volatility, and seen so much that you don't attach yourself to any trade so much? Or do you
Yeah.
have like some stuff you really, really believe in and you have a hard time letting go? Because I feel like in options land, like if volatility expands enough, you probably have to be like, dude, like I just got to take this. I don't care if
Yep.
I'm out of the position now.
Yep. Yeah. I don't marry a certain group of stocks. Like, it's funny. I actually hate trading like Mag 7 stocks. I just like to trade any ticker that looks good. Like I rarely trade Tesla. I rarely trade Nvidia. Like those type of stocks, I just stay away. It's never done well for me. But again, that's the great thing about being a flow trader, is that I see all these different type of tickers that I've never seen before. And again, it doesn't matter to me. Like if I don't know this ticker, if I've never traded before, but if it aligns with my strategy, I'm gonna take it, right? Um, so I don't necessarily marry a couple of stocks. There might be a couple that I've played multiple times and I've been successful, but again, it's not like I wake up every day and looking for that ticker and be like, okay, how am I going to trade this, today for the fourth time of the week, right? For me, it's every day is like a new day. If and whatever ticker that looks good for me, then I'll definitely take a position on that.
Yeah, you're married to the ticker. You're not married to which ticker specifically. You're just married to
E-
tickers in general, right?
Exactly. I'm married to the
Yeah,
flow. If the flow
married
looks
to the
good,
flow. That's right. You
yeah,
are married, bro. There you go.
exactly.
We just don't know what the gender is. It's just flow. It's just fluid.
Yeah, we're gonna keep
Gender
it at
fluid.
that. Yeah, exactly.
I think one of the nice things about that, and James, you can kind of like speak to this from going from like a trader who is just kind of I feel like more on that side where you're just trading the ticks in the book and the changes in price action, not really as focused on bigger picture themes or narratives or like, stuff like that. And the ability that you can have to just kind of always reset mentally every single day or every single week and not have a lot from, the past kind of bleed in, and kind of the trade-offs of that, where it's like you can always come in and it's just like a brand new day every day, versus someone who is just this continuous progression of a theme, and you have to figure out if you're getting married or divorced every year. So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I do in a sense miss that, because for 10 years I would come in and I would say I don't care if S&P is up or down, right? Cuz like I didn't have this huge bag in the background with a bias, right? Cuz like I'm in per. I want per to go up. I want hyperliquid to go up, right? So I come up every day and I refresh my screen hoping it's higher. And a little bit of me is like, ugh, like I hate that I'm even like that, because I could come in for a decade and be like, I don't care. I'll short everything. I don't give a shit. Like I'm a horizontal trader. And it's the same thing as Flo Sidon, right? Like he could take his framework, his risk framework, and he could plop it here. He could plop it there. He could plop it here. And it doesn't really matter as long as he knows like where's the action, where's the interesting execution layer to put this on. And to switch from that to trying to figure out fucking real interest rates and the curve steepening and how does that impact a 6 to 12 month position, like that's a whole new world for me that I'm still trying to acclimate to. But I find myself getting so attached to like what needs to happen. It infects me more and more. So it's something that I deal with because I was more of the fox, right? And I'm trying to become more of the bull, more of the elephant in a way. And but it's give and take, right? Because I think in the end I need to figure this out to level up, to accumulate large amounts of wealth, as opposed to trading tick for tick and praying for a VIX that goes to 50 or 80 or whatever it is. So, I think that's how I would respond to that.
Yeah, flow side, and how have you thought about, as this environment progresses, how you are kind of expecting to focus and change in the future in terms of where you're identifying trades in either the flow or other things as the market changes more? I'm sure that you already mentioned things have changed so much as the option flow increased, commissions changed. You have a lot different execution style for institutions post 2020 as well. And I'm curious, where do you think that, or where are you kind of spending time looking for new avenues for finding trade ideas or new things in this world? How do you kind of think about adapting and progressing in that way?
Yeah. So aside from flow, I've been definitely using more of gamma and vex exposures. I just partnered up with a company last year called Skylit, and they've been focusing way more on heat maps with gamma and vex exposures. So that's been another tool in the arsenal that we've been heavily using. Because sometimes, to be honest with you, there will be weeks where the flow is just not working, right? Like no matter what. Like I remember, I think it was like last month or something, where it just felt like all these whales were just getting blown out. Like, and you would have the right setup, the flow would look good, the chart would look good, but they were just on a you know horrific win rate. So we'd have to go try a new tool, and I think that's where the gamma and the vex exposures has really helped, because it kind of shows where the dealers are being positioned. So that's definitely a tool that we've really implemented into our process. Obviously, again, the charts will tell you the story. Macro will obviously catch up, micro will catch up to trading as well. But yeah, aside from the flow, the dealer positioning with the gammas and vexes and all that stuff has definitely been a help, aside from the flow.
Yeah, I like it. I think there's going to be a lot of interesting, the thing that I'm most interested in terms of what the next event will be when vol blows out, is how exactly we can have execution happen when so many institutions today, they need to move the price just to get their fill, and there's a lot less elasticity in markets, and a lot more a lot more today people have to use, whether it's 0DT options to hedge or 0DTE to get execution liquidity, where they put on a hedge and then they start an execution algo, they're hedging their risk a little bit, and then they're getting on they're putting up their risk exposure. And I think it's going to be very interesting, because if you have a real shift, especially if we have to, we're now having another inflationary shock. And if you have capital that ends up needing to shift after that and sell equities to buy bonds, or selling equities to reduce exposure because you have less incomes coming into 401k flows, institutions, all of these other kind of, mechanical parts of the market, it's going to be a perfect environment, I think, for anyone who is actively trading, especially watching kind of the flows that you're talking about and getting the reps in the option market and just watching that stuff very closely. So I just think it's one of those scenarios where you have this really cool out of the money call option on like your skill, as volatility just keeps changing so much. And then you also have that kind of tail event where eventually when something does happen, that's when you can have that really large payout if you play it right.
Right. Yeah, 100%.
I have another question, just because you're here, and I think this is super interesting. But what to you, Flo Sidon, like, what is the best regime for you? Where do you find the most success? Do you like it when it's quieter because you can see flows during like stealthy periods, and you're like, ooh, I could sneak into this position before things get crazy? Or do you really like high volatility stuff where options are pricing like crazy? Or is that bad for you? Like, how do you approach that?
Yeah, I personally, either or works. But if I had to pick one, I think it's more of the high volatility, especially if it's like, more of like a theme. When you had the theme of AI, you had the theme of photonics. Now you have the theme of the space, stocks, right? That's where we become a little more aggressive. Obviously the stealth is finding these, moves before, the greatest thing that could happen is being in a position before the flow comes, right? You're in a trade, and then next thing you know, you see a nice order and flow, and that always makes you feel better. But as far as like, the environment is definitely more of that higher volatility, higher options pricing, and kind of following the theme, right? Obviously, you might be paying a premium because the stocks that may have moved already in the past couple of days, but and whales do have a tendency of chasing the highs, and you got to be very careful with that. But at the same time, if the theme is intact, if the volume is there with these tickers, then I more prefer that than kind of waiting for the next quiet move.
That makes a lot of sense. These thematic rotations and stuff, and kind of seeing where the puck is going is like maybe you're paying a little premium, but you can kind of feel the confirmation as
Yep.
it gets going.
Yeah.
That's really good. How do you, like, what type of things stack up on the back end of that for you to give you warning signs to be like, oh, maybe some really big players are painting that options tape a little too aggressively at the highs, and like vols expand. Like, what are some of the things that give you warning signs to step away or to take
Yeah.
the opposite side?
Yeah. I mean, like, for example, when AOI hit like what 200 something a share, and you see these guys are buying, the last strike on the broker, with millions of calls, and it's the chart is just so incredibly expensive. You're like, okay, well, like this may hit, but I mean, if you're just using common sense when the stock is up like 1,000%, like, and these whales are just continuously, you know, buying $1 million worth of calls, that's like, okay, I'm gonna stay away from this. This just does not feel right, right? And if I miss it, I miss it, right? That's just how it is. There's been many stocks where you think it's expensive, and you think that, okay, it's been up 30% in the last 2 weeks. That, okay, there's no way it's going higher, and the next thing you know, it's up 90%, right? But that's the nature of trading, right? You're gonna miss moves. That's just how it is. But yeah, as far as the back, it's just seeing these like very aggressive orders just it just feels like it's more of like a intuition. I don't know, just by reading flow for the past 6 years, I have that kind of that gut feeling. And I think the more and more you look at it, the stronger feeling you get. But yeah, it's just seeing these, you know, I think a couple of days ago, before we had that little drop in the market, whales were buying SPY 1100 strikes, 1120 strikes. The max strikes. I'm like, "Oh, okay, this doesn't seem too good." Or if SPY at support, these whales are buying all these put flows for 3 million. I always tell like my members, I'm like, listen, the more and more put flow you see on SPY, I think we're getting closer to a bottom, and it has actually a pretty high win rate. It just feels like these guys are just chasing that one little extra move, and it truly doesn't work out that well.
Oh man, I love that idea on the downside, because you'll
Yeah.
feel through something like X or on Discord or whatever, you'll feel the bearishness start to peak,
Yep.
and then you could combine that with like that. I love that, like the last strike available flow,
Yep.
right?
Hmm.
That's like your perfect example of people starting to call for like 3200 S&P, or like
Exactly.
whatever it may be. Combine that with, like, I remember the last big sell off was like the bridges and infrastructure day, where we were going to nuke a 70 million person country or whatever, and I'm sure there was a lot of put flow that day too.
Yep. Yep.
And if you could kind of layer those up, that's what aligns to like a massive bet in my eyes.
Exactly. Exactly. The sentiment always works.
Yeah. Well, yeah, combined with a few other things that you've
Exactly.
like figured out over all these years. So most too many people rely just on the sentiment, but I think you have enough of these cues that you've lined up, and where
Yep.
they probably just come natural to you. But to me, I've never even heard about the idea of looking at the furthest strikeouts volume going away, right? Because I'm not an options guy. But that's
Right.
probably like level two, whatever stuff. So
Yeah.
um, I, I find that super, super interesting, and hopefully some people could take some away there.
Hmm.
Yeah, I always like thinking about that side of things, and the option flow. I know that I mean, again, I'm not as much of a complex option trader. I'll have some basic strategies running here or there, but I always think that the options trader always have a really clear information about where flow is across the entire distribution, where we're at with strikes, where we're at with different gamma and vega and
Hmm.
all of the different Greeks that we have, and then I just think how risk is priced across the entire distribution, not just a single part of the distribution. And I think
Hmm.
that's what's always right, like super valuable about what you're talking about. And I just think it's gonna be more valuable just with how information asymmetry is working, right? I think people already, I think, beginning to realize how that works when you have like poly market and all these other on-chain things, where you see these flows come in and people are trying to track wallets and all this new stuff, right? And they're realizing that there's really informed players. And I think a lot of times those are kind of kept in the background a little bit and people don't realize what's happening. But I think as more of this option flow, people recognize more on like how it fits into the overall picture, and a lot of the work that you're doing is interesting. I think it's just going to be a really cool environment to find that information asymmetry.
Hmm.
And just a comment here. I think this is like a valuable comment. I appreciate the honesty you guys have when evaluating how you approach your work, and even after years in the game, there's scope to get better. Like, yeah, that's why I think it's so important to surround yourself with the people like us three right here are very different executors in ways we think about the markets. But we can pull from each other in various ways and learn how to just add to your arsenal little things, right? I'm never going to become a flows trader, but now I have a couple more things to take away from this conversation to add to my game that's going to amplify my results in the end. So I think that's a great comment there. And yep, that's all on my end. I think super interesting stuff. I appreciate all your advice there.
Yeah, awesome. Well, Flow Sidon, thanks for hopping on and be able to chat for a little bit. I think it's just
No
really cool
worries.
to get other people on here, and I always love kind of the posts that you share and kind of some of the flow that you have. It always kind of makes me think about things a little bit differently.
Yeah.
And I'll be interested to see how I know we both kind of been talking about it a little bit, but how the per play goes out. I think what'll be
Yeah.
interesting is seeing how each of us execute around it, right? And kind of seeing
100%.
how you trade around it a little bit, kind of see where my entrances and exits end up being, whatever time horizon that is. And I think that's just great for people to be able to see different people executing on the same asset or same thesis, because they realize how connects back to this trading archetype thing and framework that James laid out. So I just think it'll be a
100%.
really cool rest of the year to see how all these different factors play out, and how we kind of end up executing across things individually.
Yeah. I appreciate you guys having me, and it's a great discussion, and hopefully, I helped in some sort of way.
Oh, for sure. No, I think a lot of the comments that you made and how you framed things was super helpful for people, and I think it brings it back to the first principles that James and I talk about on streams every day, about like what you have this information, but then how do you take that and make good decisions with it, right?
Yeah.
In these uncertain environments, right? So I think that's just another thing that's kind of really good to be thinking about.
100%.
Right on. James, any final
Cool.
thoughts?
Yeah, guys, just pulled up Flowside's page here. Go follow him. If you're an options trader and you're looking to get better, I would highly suggest going and checking out his Discord and see what's that is all about. I see the WAP link right there. Just click that, and you can probably get to chat with him a lot more often. So
Yep.
very cool. And make sure you give him a follow. And rising tide lifts all boats here, guys. We're all trying to make it.
Yes, absolutely. Appreciate you guys. Thank you so much.
Totally. All right. We'll catch everyone later. We'll catch you guys on the stream tomorrow.